Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. Ruth is a visiting professor at a large university in Ireland, and Claire is an associate professor at a primarily undergraduate university in Northern California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss. Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Claire.
And I'm Ruth. And today we're talking about inspiration. But before we do that, Claire, how was your week?
My week was good. Last week, I was telling you all how Ralph and I are looking for a new house to rent. And we were like, okay, but we're going to do it super chill. We're not going to run around frantically. And then 3 days later, we found a spot and we rented it. And now we're done with finding a house. So that was really exciting.
Oh, sweet. Are you in?
We're not in yet. We're like moving over. We still have, because we thought it was going to take us a long time to find a place. We have this Airbnb that we're in for another week. And so we're like calmly moving stuff over, which is nice.
Do you know what's funny though? Because I've tried this tactic. Before where you're like, okay, I'm going to anticipate that this is going to take ages. And then secretly you're like, but then that's going to mean it's going to be really easy. And like, I always blow it. But it seems like you guys really were like, yes, this is going to just take as long as it takes. It's fine.
Yeah, and then somehow that manifested it being pretty fast, which was awesome.
Perfect.
And yeah, our new place is super cool. It's really quick bike ride to campus, which is awesome. And there's this trail that 3 separate people have told us about, this trail that you can walk on to get to campus, but all 3 of them are like, oh, but I don't take the trail, I just take the roads. So I'm not sure what that means about this trail, but it'll be fun to check it out.
Wow, you'll have to report back, or you'll just be like, let's not do the trail, and you won't ever tell us why. Like, but why, Claire? So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So how about you? How was your week?
My week was good. I think I don't want to make any grand statements about the kids not being sick, but they weren't sick this week. So
that's good.
I will say that for sure. And then we're coming up now to a break. So yes, we'll take the wins where they happen, for sure.
Good. That's excellent.
So I have 2 quotes this week. One is an unofficial quote that just really made me laugh earlier on. So I'm going to do that one first, if that's okay. Yeah. So I won't go into the details, but for whatever reason, life just went sideways today and I was unable to go to the grocery store and get food to prepare for dinner. So I was complaining to my sister that I just don't have any food for dinner. I don't know what I'm going to do here. And then she said, anything is dinner if you believe hard enough. And I was like, oh, I really like that. So yeah, yes. And that's what we had. We had plain pasta. So anything can be dinner if you decide it's dinner.
I like plain pasta. Nothing wrong with that.
Me too. Yeah, it's fine. I don't know why. Sometimes I feel very attached to what it should be. But okay, and then my more formal quote is, because we're talking about inspiration, and I have had, well, this I could have talked about in my week as well. I watched 2 documentaries last week that were super inspirational for me that I really, really enjoyed. Okay. So one was Siobhan McSweeney, who is from Dairy Girls. She's Sister Michael, for anybody who knows, has a documentary about St. Bridget, which I was very into and excited about. And then also I watched a documentary, I think I've talked on here about my love/obsession with Maeve Binchy. She is my favourite author, human, everything. But she, her documentary was just so inspiring to me and it just really resonated with me. But one thing, one of her quotes is, nobody is ordinary if you know where to look. And I really think that's true. And I think even the name of the documentary about her was okay, I'm going to misquote it, but it was like the magic of the ordinary. And I think that's really relevant to what we're talking about today. Inspiration. And particularly in education and everything. So yes.
I love that. That's really nice. It really helps think about individuals as individuals and who are they, and I don't know. I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
So what are we talking about today, Ruth?
So we're talking about inspiration, and I was thinking about, well, we've been kind of musing a little bit on what inspires us and what's inspirational to us, and then how does that translate into how we can inspire students and how do students get inspired? Totally. So yeah. So what do you... Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm in the battle. You go first. No, you go first.
So Yeah, Ralph and I have been thinking a lot about surrounding ourselves with things that we find inspiring. And so one thing, like reading books that have stories that I really enjoy inspires me to work on the craft of the novel that I'm working on. Or being in places that I like puts me in a good mood to look for inspiration and be able to take it and work with it. Because, if I'm in the wrong mindset, it's hard to even see the inspiration and be excited about it. And then, of course, people that I find inspirational is really, that puts me in a good mood, and to be able to take the inspiration and emulate what they're doing that I like. And it's really much easier to emulate things than to come up with them yourself. Of course, that's kind of part of what we're talking about with inspiration, I think. And so seeing people doing awesome things makes me say, oh, wow, I want to do those awesome things too. And then likewise, cutting out things that don't do that or that actively go in the opposite direction. So like hearing people grumble and complain makes me think about things to grumble and complain about. So if I can like switch the conversation around and talk about things that we're excited about, then that conversation becomes more inspirational.
So grumbling inspiration isn't what you're looking for.
Right, it inspires me to grumble.
To be a more negative person. Yeah, true. Yeah, I love that about surrounding yourself with things, because I feel like I've documented it on this podcast, but I feel like I went, with the pandemic, I went into such a utilitarian mindset of like just the absolute essentials. Like, do you have to do this thing? And even like, do I have to really go into work? What is the point in a conversation? Is that going to help me get my job done? Like, all of those things, because it was just being so time poor.
Yes.
You had to be really mercenary about like, this is not on the list of, urgent or whatever. And so I feel like I'm going through the process of like opening up all of that again, and then being in this new job, I find like just the whole program that's happening very inspirational. And then, like you said, like just being around things. So even just being around other people and listening to them, their stories and stuff. But I love what you're saying, because sometimes I have gotten so utilitarian that you're like, well, what's the point of a walk on the beach? I could be doing laundry or making soup or whatever it is. And so I think recognizing, and even because I think I've talked about on here, I feel so fancy going into town, but the buildings in Dublin city centre are so beautiful, and just all of that stuff is really, it shifts your mood and, changes.
Totally. I remember when you were thinking about this job, you were saying, and the buildings are just so beautiful. And like, what an inspirational thing to go to your work and be like, wow, what a beautiful spot. I mean, that's wonderful. It reminds me of, I don't know, a more mundane thing of just, I find having a nice clean desk inspirational, but it's so easy to be like, who has time to clean their desk? That's not going to help me move my project forward. And then I'm not in an inspired, excited mindset because I'm at this desk that I don't like. So it's actually worthwhile to create an inspirational space, or to choose to walk on the beach, or to go to this, beautiful campus, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. And I remember actually when I went for my interview at Humboldt, I remember being so inspired by the campus too, because it's so beautiful, and the trees outside the building and all of that. And so, I think like, I feel like I'm definitely much more opening up to that. And then I was thinking about like what's inspirational in people to me. And I was thinking about like, why am I so obsessed with Maeve Binchy?
Ooh, great question.
Yeah. And I think like she's so, and this is so cheesy and I feel like ridiculous even saying it, but she's so authentically herself.
Oh, I love it.
Do you know what I
that's
mean?
not,
And,
that's, I totally am on board with that concept.
well, like, and it's like, the whole like be yourself, because, I can't remember what the quote is actually. I'm falling down the quote. Like, but it's so, like, when you're around someone like that, it's so, you feel it. Do you know what I mean? And it's something I struggle with. The kind of confidence to just be like, well, this is me, deal with this.
I mean, seeing somebody be authentically themselves is inspirational to be authentically yourself, which is helpful to even figure out what is it to be yourself? What are the attributes that you really, that are really truly you? So that's really cool. I was thinking about, how I often think about what would a professor who knows what she's doing do? That's like a question that I ask myself sometimes. And what I'm really asking, I was thinking about this, I'm really asking, what do I think the professors who have inspired me would do? Let me think about the inspirational professors I've had. What would they do? That's kind of what I'm asking myself. thinking just through the academic lens, it's if I'm trying to be the best professor I can be, I'm thinking about my favorite professors and what they did. Of course, that's true in every walk of life as well. And then I was particularly thinking like the moments when I say, wow, this person is really inspiring. The times that I've thought that recently is when someone is doing something that I really want to do and haven't quite figured out how to do yet. You know?
Like, but that's what I just said about Maeve Binchy.
Yes,
that's so
exactly,
true.
Exactly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You see somebody like, I don't know, the example that I'm thinking of right now is this colleague of mine who seemed so relaxed and on top of it while doing preparations for a research cruise. And for me, I feel like I'm either on top of it and frantic, or I'm like, I've put it off and I'm maybe relaxed.
I love the idea of you just being so relaxed with your feet up on the desk. I'll do it tomorrow. It's fine. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so just seeing an example of her being on it and being like, we have this problem, not sure how to solve it yet, but we're going to solve it. And she seemed relaxed. And just seeing that is so helpful to emulate. And I don't know, emulating so much easier than making it up from scratch. And it's just so nice to see that it's possible in this person. So yes, I totally agree with you. Someone doing something like Maeve Binchy that you want to do and haven't quite gotten there yet is extra inspirational.
Do you know what? This is really interesting and blowing my mind, because it's really making me think that whenever you do feel inspired, maybe that is a call. So there was someone else I was feeling very inspired by this week. Sorry, my voice is going. And it was someone like, he kind of really like pushes people to fulfill their potential. Do you know what I mean? And even like,
I love that,
to the point that I'm really bad at that. Do you know what I mean? I much prefer to let people sit in what's comfortable. Do you know what I mean? And like, I prefer, like, because, you know, so like, and anyway, this was kind of because, he's been kind of like doing it, like nudging me a little bit. And I'm like, I kind of like this, I kind of don't like it. But then I saw it with somebody else and I was like, oh, that is amazing. And you could see the benefit. So I think that's calling me to, because, you know, I've talked about it on here before. Like, I have a hard time holding people, like maintaining expectations and stuff. Like, I kind of let people off the hook, students, you know. So anyway, that was super interesting. But I wonder, because I was like, oh, that's very inspiring. And then really cool. I guess maybe that's letting me know it's something I want to work on.
That's really interesting. I wonder, so when you're getting pushed, and, you know, I can see that you're like, oh, I kind of want to rise to this potential, but it's also kind of, you know, you're being pushed. It's a new thing, so it's kind of hard. But when you see someone else, when you see this person pushing someone else, were you able to see, oh, this is an area that this person could do better in with a little push? Like, did it make some sense, the direction he was pushing this particular person?
Totally. And it was actually someone who, like, they had that experience years before, and then we're having the, you know, result now, and we're like, oh, that was so amazing. I was like,
cool.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, so I was both kind of inspired to sort of stretch myself a little bit, but then also when I'm working with people and students, like, to try and be like, do you know, I think I've used this phrase before, but it's like warm demander, where it's like, oh yeah, no, you can totally do this. It's fine, but you're going to do it, you know, and not like where I'm like, well, maybe you don't have to, don't worry about it. It's fine. You know, like, I kind of get uncomfortable. So then, yeah, that was, I love that. Inspiring for sure.
Inspiring to be more of a warm demander. I love it. So how does this translate for you, do you think, to the students in the classroom? What have you thought about with that so far?
So I think what I'm thinking about for me, the thing that's coming up for me is like inspire or impress. Okay. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of been like, because, you know, you've had encounters with professors, like, as a student, and you're just like, oh my God, that guy's so smart. This is the best thing. And like, you're just like, whoa. And it's really cool. And like, you have a great time and it's all of those things. But like, you're just like, I could never be like that. That's, you know what I mean? And so I think, to me, the difference with maybe inspiring is like, you know, really encouraging people to see how they could do the thing rather than, do you know what I mean? And so I think that's really inspiring. And sometimes it doesn't, like, it's not as, do you know, Eric Mazur gave a great lecture at a conference I was at. He does like the think, pair, share stuff. But he was talking about how he was just such a great lecturer and so great. And it was like a whole performance. And but then like it wasn't actually doing what he thought it was doing. And so I think,
Ah.
he moved from maybe impressing everybody to, really inspiring them to do the stuff themselves. And so, yes, I think that's what I would like to, and like hope I do sometimes with students, where like giving them the confidence to do the things and inspiring, what am I trying to say? Like that they have the ability to do the thing and really awakening that in them rather than check me out doing the thing.
So it's like giving some empowerment, inspiring empowerment.
Yes, exactly.
Now, how does this manifest? I love the contrast you're presenting of impress versus inspire. How does that actually look in the classroom? Like, what's the difference?
I think so. Like there was times, and this is not great to admit, but there were certainly times when I was teaching in the beginning where like I was doing things that are like, whoa, check this out. And then I remember somebody being like, well, why are you showing that to first years? Like, there's no point. That's just going to stress people out. And it's not, do you know what I mean? And I definitely had to think about like, okay, this isn't the thing. And so I think for me, what I would hope is you're just really encouraging people or giving them the tools to sort of take off and believe that they can do things. It's more about investing in what they can do and their belief in what they can do rather than what they think you can do.
I see. That makes
Make
sense. It does. I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I've been thinking, I've talked about this before in the podcast, but not recently. So I'm glad it's coming back up. But the lead by example kind of thing, where I think it's very important to show the students attributes that I think are valuable. And for me, it seems like I care a lot about calm, confident, enthusiastic, respectful. And so I try to be, I think
that's like
I'm
your
not
whole
trying
persona right there.
Yeah, exactly.
You just describe Claire. Yes.
It's like, it's interesting because you're talking about being genuinely you. And I think those are genuine attributes that reflect me because I care a lot about them. But I also make a conscious effort to display them so that hopefully students can, maybe some aspect of that will be inspirational to some of my students. So the idea is like, I'm being the best professor I can be by my definition, and hopefully, some aspects of that will be inspirational to some people.
That's lovely, because you've talked about before, like the way you interact with students and the way you talk to them, you know, about things, and that really reflects those values.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the content that we're covering, of course, and that's what we're doing in the classroom. But then there's, how do you feel in the classroom? What are you inspired to do? And I hope you're inspired to study the content and learn the content and really interact with it. But part of what inspires you to do that is the atmosphere of the classroom. How you feel while you're in the classroom. And do you feel empowered to do it? Do you feel like you can do it? And then I also just feel like those attributes, calm, confident, enthusiastic, respectful, I feel like those, it would just really help everybody. I don't know. Everybody's got their own certain pillars that they feel like are really important, but I think those are mine. And so I want to share those with the students too. So that's like another aspect of what I think is important that I'm teaching. It's kind of like how I'm not teaching writing, but when we do writing, I'm going to give them feedback on their writing. I because I do feel like that's important too. So it's like these attributes are important too. So we're doing quantitative analysis. That's the class. We're definitely covering that. And part of that is your writing skills, and part of that is these emotional attributes that I want to share.
Yeah.
And all of that I hope will help them leave the class better equipped for all the things they want to do.
Lovely. And I think one thing I'm thinking through our conversations is like inspiration, it needs to be like accessible, because if it's just like you coming in and doing 15 cartwheels, I'm like real impressed, but I'm not inspired to, like, I'm never going to do, you know what I mean? And so
that's a great
if it's
analogy.
something, so I think like if it's something that you're like, this is something you can do it's really important.
Yeah, and giving them some steps so that they can start doing it. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, you can do 15 cartwheels, but it's another to be like, oh, what you should do is just practice, putting this one hand down and putting some weight on it.
I was like, wow, are you going to break this down? Can you do 15 cartwheels? Yes.
That's cool. I love that. This is a really interesting topic. I'm really glad you suggested it. I've really been enjoying thinking about what kinds of things are inspirational, what kind of situations are inspirational, and then just like, I hadn't really thought directly about trying to set up a classroom environment that's inspirational, but I love the concept and totally want to now. So that's great.
Well, it's funny because what you said is the same things, right? Because you're talking about surrounding yourself with things that are inspiring, and then you're talking about creating an atmosphere that is inspiring. You know what I mean? So it's like literally, creating that in the classroom. So yeah.
Totally. Mm-hmm. And it does make me think, like, one thing that I've thought about before is my teaching lab space is like kind of dirty. The paint's kind of peeling off the floor and stuff like that. And, I try to make it as welcoming as possible, particularly on the first day when all the students are new to the space and are getting their first impressions of it. But I hadn't really thought about how, like, if it's so important to me to have a place that is, I don't know, tidy and clean, and if I find that inspirational, then maybe there is more value than I had thought in trying to create such a space for the classroom. Maybe some other students would find that inspirational and motivational.
This is so interesting because I feel like it's bringing me loads of things, but one of them too is just the importance. Because I was like, oh, I've come out of this utilitarian, but I still feel guilty about it sometimes. You know what I mean? Because you're like, well, I should be doing laundry or making soup or whatever I was saying. So it is really, I appreciate, like thinking about this and thinking about why this is actually, like you said, like, is probably making your lab prettier or cleaner or whatever is probably the last thing, really. Mm-hmm. But then it is important. And so, giving some weight to it, I think is great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm not doing it in, like, I don't mean to just say, oh, I got to do this too, but more like, oh, I now see a bigger understanding of the value of it.
Yes.
And so a more, I don't know, appropriate level of value. So that's cool.
100%. Well, thank you so much for a very inspiring conversation.
Oh, thank you, Ruth.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.